Comfortable. I'm Dan Prickett. I get to serve as one of the councilmen here on Kiowa Island, and I want to welcome you on behalf of the mayor and all of our staff at Kiowa to a little bit of an update on something that's terribly important to all of us and has been for years. Paul Roberts is in the audience. He's been working on this problem, I think, for 20 or 25 years, last I checked. But we're getting close to a solution. The county has worked hard on what's called the Main Road Corridor, and as all of you know, if you live out here or work out here, you're connected pretty much with 3 highways that get us to the rest of the world. Main Road, which is the big focus of this today, which increasingly gets congested, especially, as you know, in the morning and afternoon when the workforce is commuting. Maybank Highway, which we should have built years ago with 6 lanes, is still 2. And then we've got River Road, and especially at the north end, the river is getting congested as well. So we are delighted to welcome Jenny Honeycutt, who is our council representative and has been a real advocate for trying to get our roads improved. And she's going to introduce some of the county staff who are going to give you an update on where things stand so that you better understand all the alternatives, which we understand the county's going to try to narrow down to a fewer number so we can look at those and then get going, hopefully, on turning some earth over and getting some things improved. So Jenny, welcome to Kiowa. It's good to see you, as always.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you all so much for coming out. This is an extremely important road project. You know, I have been very focused on improving the safety and capacity of our roads for the last 4 years, and we are finally making some headway. It has taken a lot of time. As you know, we have to go through an environmental process that looks at multiple alternatives, the impacts that those alternatives create on the environment, and on every other feature, not just environment, but on cultural contexts, other things like that, impacts to houses, impacts to left turns, all of the different types of things you see in any road improvement project. And so we've come up. Most of you are aware that we had 6 alternatives. We now have a 7th, and that process went through the public phase. It started in COVID, which we all got together and met many of you who participated in that virtually, and we realized that that just wasn't enough. We needed some face-to-face interaction, which happened in the past spring, and it has taken a good bit of time to try to coalesce all of that information. We got hundreds of comments, and we wanted to make sure that we responded thoughtfully to all of it. And so today is actually the first time that we are publicly presenting. There is a link on our website, which we'll provide after this, but publicly presenting the results of that public input. And so from here, what you're probably going to see is us come back to the public, because there is not a clear, what we call preferred alternative that came out of those 7 alternatives through the public process. And so we're going to start with a video that's been available on our website, but to give you a reminder of the various alternatives, because they are a variety. Again, most of you have seen widening River Road, widening Bohicket Road, creating an entirely new road across Johns Island. So there were lots of options. So what we want to do is give you a chance to watch this video, to give you a frame of reference, and then we have Herbert Nims, who is the Charleston County project manager for this project, and then our consultant Chris Gossett, who's here, who's going to run through the survey. And then after that, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of staff and myself, and we can talk more after that. For now, I'm going to show you this video.
Hi, I'm Herbert Nims, the project manager for the Main Road Corridor Improvement Project. Welcome to the public information meeting for Segment C, which includes Bohicket Road improvement from Maybank Highway to Betsy Harrison Parkway. Our project team has decided to share with you all our hard work and present the proposed alternatives for Segment C. We encourage you to review the information provided and submit feedback by filling out the comment form.
The first display shows the Main Road Corridor Project study area, including segments A, B, and C, as well as the status of each segment. Segment C, the focus of this meeting, includes Bohicket Road improvements from Maybank Highway to Betsy Harrison Parkway. The purpose of the project is to reduce traffic congestion and increase capacity on Bohicket Road from Maybank Highway to Betsy Carrison Parkway. The second purpose of the project is to provide opportunity for bicyclists and pedestrians to safely travel through the project area. Each proposed alternative includes a 12-foot wide multi-use path throughout the project area. The project is following the National Environmental Policy Act process and is currently at the third step, a public information meeting to gather public input on the proposed alternatives. As part of the NEPA process, the project team must evaluate multiple alternatives and refine and narrow down the alternatives by putting them through a tiered screening process, which looked at factors such as, does the alternative meet the purpose and need of the project? How does the alternative affect the natural environment, specifically streams, wetlands, and floodplains? And how many relocations of residents and businesses are required from each alternative? The project team is currently evaluating 6 alternatives for Segment C. The proposed alignment for each alternative is shown on this overall display. Each alternative display includes a legend and a matrix outlining the impacts to wetlands, streams, farmlands, and potential relocations associated with each alternative. Alternative 1 includes widening Bohicket Road from Betsy Carrison Parkway to Brownswood Road. This alternative includes sections of a 4-lane divided roadway with a center left turn lane to minimize impacts to grand trees. Some areas shift to a 5-lane roadway with a center turn lane to minimize impacts to residents in the more densely populated areas of Bohicket Road. This alternative includes intersection improvements at Edenville Road, Plowground Road, Maybank Highway, and Brownswood Road. Alternative 1A was developed as a means to reduce impacts to grand trees along the southern section of Bohicket Road compared to Alternative 1, because tree impacts were of significant interest during the first public information meeting. Alternative 1A includes a multi-use path and the southern terminus is shortened. Alternative 1A includes widening Bohicket Road from Edenvale Road to Brownswood Road. This alternative includes sections of a 4-lane divided roadway with a center left turn lane to minimize impacts to grand trees. Some sections include a 5-lane roadway with a center turn lane to minimize impacts to residents in the more densely populated areas of Bohicket Road. This alternative includes intersection improvements at Edenville, Plowground, Maybank, and Brownswood Roads, and also includes a multi-use path from Betsy Carrison Parkway to Maybank Highway. This display shows Alternative 3, a new location 4-lane divided roadway with a multi-use path on both sides. This new alignment road would be located between Bohicket Road and River Road and would connect Betsy Carrison Parkway to River Road just south of Maybank Highway. Alternative 4 includes widening Bohicket Road to a 4-lane divided highway from Betsy Carrison Parkway to just north of Edenvale Road. Here, a new location roadway would begin, connecting Bohicket Road across the island to River Road. The new location road would connect River Road at a new signalized intersection. Alternative 6 was proposed by Rational Roads for Johns Island after extensive public involvement since the first public information meeting. Alternative 6 consists of intersection improvements along Bohicket Road, North Edenville Road, Plowground Road, Maybank Highway, and at River Road and Betsy Carrison Parkway. A new connection from Bohicket Road to Brownswood Road in the vicinity of Hot Gap Middle School is also proposed. The new road would extend across Maybank Highway at Boyd N. Hayes Road. Alternative 7 was proposed by the town of Kiowa Island after extensive public involvement since the first public information meeting. Alternative 7 includes widening Bohicket Road between Edenville and Brownswood Roads, widening Plowground Road, and widening River Road from Plowground Road to Maybank Highway. Thank you for your time and interest in the Main Road Corridor Segment C project. To view the information presented, please go to the website you see on your screen. If you have questions or comments, please fill out the comment form by clicking the Contact tab on the top of your screen. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you.
All right, so that brings us to where we are today, and through that public process and all the comments feedback we got on those alternatives, we've already eliminated a couple that didn't work at all. And so I did want to introduce before, believe it or not, there was some traffic out there. Devry DeToma, who's also with our transportation staff, is here today, can answer any questions you might have. But now I'm going to turn it over to Herbert to introduce our consultant.
Thank you very much. As Councilmember Honeycutt said, I'm the project manager, Herbert Nims, for Charleston County. We had 6 alternatives that we brought to the public. Y'all are well aware of that. I have met some of you at the public information meetings in April and May. Along with us today, we have Chris Costa, who is our consultant. We've had around 2,000 comments to go through. We addressed each of those comments, and he is going to go over our comment summary response, kind of give you the rundown of the trends, what we saw, and our path forward. So, Chris Costa.
Thank you. All right, y'all bear with me. This change in weather's got me a little messed up here, so I'm glad there's a microphone. Going back to the beginning of this project, we had a lot of conversations about how were we going to do outreach here. The main focus of all the outreach that we did was to focus on the folks of Johns Island, Kiowa, Seabrook, the people that use these corridors, the people that use these roads. And I think as we go through this, I'll point out some stuff that says we were fairly successful at doing that, with most of the comments coming from the people that live here and use this road. But again, we always start with the purpose and need of the project. Most of y'all are familiar with that, and I believe it was in the video as well, so I won't bore you with reading it. All right, so the breakdown of we focused on getting the people the information and feedback from the people that use it. So of all of the comments that we got, and there were 1,940 something of them, I think was the exact number, 82% of those came from people that, one, gave us their address and listed a zip code, and 82% of those came from the 29455 zip code. So that's the people that are here and using the corridor. In addition to that, which kind of surprised me, it was pretty widespread where we got comments from Houston to Cincinnati, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, some in Virginia, and some kind of spread around other parts of South Carolina. But the bulk of them came from Johns Island, Kiowa, and Seabrook. Now again, this is not every comment that we got, because I didn't have full addresses from everybody that turned in something on the website. So if Google Maps would map it, it's on here. So, and then we broke them down in which one of those alternatives those people said they would prefer. Now, some of them, you had the option, you could prefer all of them if you just want something done, or one if you like that particular alternative. We also asked how many times people use and drive the corridor. The 2 middle columns represent 5 to 7 times a week, 3 to 5 times a week. So again, that's 1,300 of the people that responded use the corridor on a regular basis. So again, we targeted those folks, and those were the ones that we got feedback from. Again, we had common concerns. This was pretty much a holdover from the first meeting that we had. Traffic, relocations, grand trees, and any environmental impacts are always a concern of most road projects that I've ever dealt with. Now, so in the upper left corner there, of all the comments that we got back, 96% of the comments came back that supported doing something. Only 3.9% of the comments said, don't touch it, don't do anything, leave us alone. So of those 96%, which is a pretty high percentage from my history working on projects, want to see something done. Now, here's where we go kind of sideways. What is that something? So the breakdown, you can see alternate 3, which is the new location road through the middle of the island, 23%. Alternate 4, which is portion of Bohicket, some new roadway, 18%. And I'll jump to 7, 26%. That is portions of Bohicket, plow ground, and river. And I skipped 6 only because I got more to talk about on that. So if you purely look at people that said they preferred alternative 6, it was 29% of the people responded they like alternative 6. As we were going through the comments, all right, back up, a little history. Alternative 6, as originally proposed by the Rational Roads Group, we took a look at what they originally proposed and gave us. And we had some concerns with that at certain situations, certain locations, it did not improve traffic, and in some situations, it made traffic worse. So when you go through the comments, those 29% of all the comments of people that selected alternative 6, a large portion of those comments, 68%, said they preferred the original proposal by Rational Roads. So 32% of the people, 32% of that 29%, and I know I'm an engineer, I like numbers, so I apologize, but 32% of the people that responded in favor of alternate 6 preferred the changes that we made to alternative 6. And if you were at any of the public meetings, I was there at the alternate 6 station to go through what those changes were. If anybody wants to go through that, I'll be more than happy to stay after and go through it, but I won't bore you with that right now.
There's also a link that shows the changes.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, so that link at the bottom, and this is on the website. This presentation is on the website. There's a YouTube link in the bottom of this slide where we presented to County Council the differences of those two alternatives. So this is where we, what do we do? We were hoping to get a consensus of one of the alternatives. As you can see, we're kind of evenly all over the board with support for those alternatives. So we can come back to this. So the path forward, and Ms. Honeycutt alluded to this, is after all of this review and analysis of this comments, what we're going to do is talk to the regulatory agencies that we have to go through to permit any roadway project in South Carolina. We're going to talk to them, see if there is an opportunity to take more than one alternative forward, and if they will allow us to take more than one through the permitting process. I've never done that before. I don't know what their reactions are going to be, but we're going to go talk to them and see what they think. So that's a path forward. So part of that, and I'll talk about Army Corps of Engineers permit, which is the big one that we have to get. For any road project, we have to go through the Army Corps of Engineers to get a permit. The things that the Army Corps looks at is impacts to wetlands and impacts to streams. That's their two big items. So we know that moving forward. So of these alternatives, we have to, we'll talk to them about what and how to go through this process, but those are the things that they are going to be most interested in. So we're going to have to wade that against the information that we have, what we'll be able to do, time frame to move everything forward. So a decision on a preferred alternative is out in the future a little bit at this point. With the permitting, part of permitting a project with the Corps, we also have to be able to show that alternative or alternatives that we move forward meet the purpose and need of the project. Part of the purpose and need is increasing capacity, reducing congestion, and this information was in the public information meeting. It was in the handout. I think it was on the website as well. Yeah, it was, because the handout was on the website. So what this is not a comparison from one alternative to the other alternative. Everything that we do and how we base improvements, impacts, what a project does is based on doing nothing. So each alternative is compared to what's out there right now. So this is traffic operational improvements, and I kind of got beat up on using the red a little bit, but we'll see all the colors that we used. But every alternative that we move forward meets the purpose and need of the project. It makes traffic better. Some make traffic better than others, and that's what we're trying to show with this slide and this information. So everything that we have done, all the alternatives that were developed, they do make traffic better. Some are better than others, and that's what this shows. For the common concerns, this is out there. This was, some of this was a holdover from the first public information meeting that we had as well, and it was just answering some of those common concerns and a response to what those concerns are. So, and y'all free to pull this down and look at it and ask any questions. And that's all I got.
All right, so that brings us to today and where we go from here. So we've put some of this information out on the website. It's available, but we've not, County Council as a whole has not received this presentation. And so we're really kind of getting the survey out there through this type of meeting. And what we want to do at this point is take any questions you might have, but I did want to provide one other bit of context, because this main road corridor project is the entire length of Main Road. And we skipped over it because it doesn't as much affect this end of the island, but certainly has a huge impact on the ability to get off the island, which is segment A. Segment A is already out to bid. It is. We're evaluating, 3 firms have submitted for design build, and we're currently evaluating the first phase. And then we're going to work on the second phase if we assume all 3 of them are qualified. So that is in the works, and we're actually reviewing those qualifications right now. So as segment A worked through the NEPA process, same process that went here, the preferred alternative was immediate. There was no conflict over what should be done. The preferred alternative was the flyover over 17, and that's what Devery is saying that is out to bid already. So we've gotten 3 bids, and now we're in the process of evaluating those bids. That is set to move forward. There's no more public engagement on that. So then segment C, what we're talking about here today, has been narrowed down from was 6, then 7, and now what are going to be that pie graph you saw that had 30%, 20%, 19%. We've got to try to develop a more consensus around what would be maybe the 2 preferred alternatives. So when Chris was talking about talking to the powers that be, whether that's Army Corps of Engineers or other permitting agencies, about bringing 2 designs forward, that's what we're trying to determine at this point. Depending on what their response is to that, will determine how we engage with the public. But normally in this design phase, we only design up to about 30%. So every detail is not established. Are we still at 30% on these, or even there? So we're not even up to 30%. There's a lot of refinement that can be done, but as you might imagine, full-scale design of all 7 alternatives would have been an impossibility. And so at this point, I want to open it up for anybody that has any questions, or of our staff and consultants are here to answer those questions as well, about the process, where we go from here, and what it is that you all hope to see out of it. Yes, sir.
Yes, I have a question from staff. You pulled up a slide with the operational improvements, the one with the big red dot that kind of sticks out there for all 6. Minimal operational improvements. Is that the original Alt 6, or is that your revised Alt 6 that gets the red dot?
That is our revised Alt
So
6.
the revised even is minimal.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's surprising to me.
Yeah, everything that we did evaluation into these alternatives, into these impacts was our version of alternate 6.
Yes,
So
sir.
it makes, so a follow-up, it makes minimal, some of these make minimal improvements based on the purpose of the project. So one has to ask, why isn't it even an preferred alternative? Or one to be further considered?
Well, there's a lot that goes into selecting a preferred alternative. It's does it meet the purpose and need of the project? All of these do. So that's checked, yes. What can we permit? What can we get through the permitting process with the Corps and other regulatory permitting agencies? And what gives us the best operational improvements for the money that we're going to spend?
Yeah, my concern is if it takes 25 years to get some of these things, the significant or best operational improvement kind of outweighs or gets my vote anyway, versus vis-a-vis some of the other alternatives that might cut down less grand trees or whatever.
Correct.
And if we move too forward, that would be the kind of comments we would need to see, is how we would feel. And to be fair, part of this is the public engagement aspect of it. And so the NEPA process mandates that we get that feedback. And so there are a lot of contextual factors to consider, how it impacts properties and how, so those are all things that weigh into it, but certainly its function and its impact to wetlands is a huge issue. But the reason the widening of River Road, for instance, has automatically been eliminated is it would never get permitted. It was not feasible. So some of it's feasibility, and then we're refining from there the questions that you're talking about. But thank you. Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Just, I know this is supposed to be about segment C, but I'm very curious because I asked a question in writing and never got a response. What happened to segment B? Why was segment B taken off the table? And what about Maybank Highway? Because it is critically in need of expansion.
So when we started this whole project, it was a couple of things. We looked at it, we did a project approach, and our models assume Mark Clark Extension is moving forward. With that being said, segment B is not needed. If you look at the traffic, it's not needed. We did the CHATS modeling, so we have said that part is inactive. The major needs are on segment A and segment C based on our traffic analysis.
I'm not sure I understand that because having been stuck in traffic on Main Road in both directions
Right.
all the time, I'm not sure how you can justify saying it's not needed. I know it's related to what happens at the end, but having done probably hundreds of road projects in my career, I just don't see how you reach that conclusion.
Okay, and we'll be more than happy to sit down with you and show you that project approach and the data. But just so you're aware, segment C does go to Brownswood because we have acknowledged there is a traffic problem, a backup because of that intersection as well. So it does go a little past. What's that? I'm sorry.
Ever to Brownswood.
Okay. Yeah, it showed, if you look in our traffic analysis, it is not needed with the Mark Clark extension.
I did. But what about Maybank?
Maybank?
Maybank Highway.
So Maybank, we try to widen with the 2004-2006 referendum, and there's a whole web page on that. Then we had design plans, and a lot of community advocates came out and said, we don't want Maybank widened. We don't want trees taken down. There were these pitchfork concept roads that were developed. We're moving forward with one. In fact, we just opened bids on a northern pitchfork, and that's going to start construction in January. The southern actually, if you look at where the city platted the right-of-way, actually takes a large number of grand trees, and it comes in at a different place than the northern pitchfork, so it doesn't even align. So that would mean maybe another traffic light, and it's also the reserved right-of-way is in wetlands. So we don't even feel like it's permittable. What?
But I'm talking about just Maybank itself. There's no walkways, there's no bike lanes, there's nothing for the safety of the pedestrians, and you're trying to create that community there. It just doesn't seem like any energy is being put into designing something that will help that problem.
Right. So again, we did have full design plans, and that kind of got squashed years ago.
Well, but that was then, this is now. Times have changed.
To that point, Alternative 7 that was developed actually looked at widening Plowground Road as an element of relieving some of the pressure on Maybank. Here's what we have to take into account. I lived on the island. I live James Island right now. Grew up on James Island, but for 12 years lived out here from about 2005 to 2017. The issue was that project was killed. We don't come back to a project that's killed typically very, very often and in a short time period. There was extreme opposition to that, especially by the city, and those are mostly city parcels down there. That's also the ridge of Johns Island. It's the highland, so it's where density is planned for. We're putting those multifamily, all that commercial you see coming online on Maybank. But to look at the full context, Wadmalaw really opposed the widening of Maybank because they felt like it created a thoroughfare into what is the most restrictive zone in the area in all of Charleston County. Most of Wadmalaw is AG 15, and they will likely, if that is proposed again, come out again dead set against it. So we are looking at other alternatives, and I know that the town is going to pursue, there's some grant funding coming through the BCD COG of what else there may be. One concern that has come up on Plowground is it is outside the urban growth boundary. So we have to look at how that would impact growth.
I'm sorry, it seems like I'm monopolizing this, but my point is not widening Maybank. I know you can't do that. You can put more turning lanes in where they're necessary. You can figure out where they need to be, but you need sidewalks there because you can't walk along the side of that road without taking your life in your hands.
And I don't disagree. I think there was a TIF set up actually to start to capture some revenue for those improvements. I'm happy to put you in touch with Carl Brady. He's the city council representative right now. And I'm not saying that sidewalks are off the table. With the new complete streets models that the SCDOT has approved since I was on council, just like the fact that we're putting in a 12-foot multi-use path along this entire corridor, those mandates are coming down and they are being accepted in any new improvement project. So that concept is not off the table.
And the northern pitchfork does have sidewalks. So it's kind of a route that follows Maybank, and it does have sidewalks. So that is a piece of it to get safer for bike and peds.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I have two quick questions. One, read it, and then do you think it confuses people in some of these, particularly this red dot there, by including?
We got folks live streaming that can't hear you.
Sorry. So, do you feel like it's confusing to some people to include or not include intersection improvements with road problems? Because Bohicket Road doesn't necessarily have a traffic problem. What it has is an intersection problem and around Hot Gap all the way to the intersection through there. So while this gentleman may say that Bohicket Road has a problem, once you clear that area most of the time, it's pretty easy driving because in the morning you can see you're backed up to the school and in the other direction past the Berkeley Electric. So the intersection is the problem. It's not actually Bohicket Road. So I wonder if you could possibly separate that out and at least show that you have some operational improvement, but not maybe at the intersection. And part two, and this is probably going to offend some people here, but I've lived in Charleston my entire life, out here 25 years. And I was wondering if it was concerning to anyone that on this map that you put up of the people that took alternatives, that Kiowa Island, the proposal that you guys picked, was overwhelming the one that you chose. However, no one out here chose alternative 6 or a less invasive problem. The Kiowa plan, Alt 7, most relocations, second most farmland destroyed, and most cultural resource destroyed, and it destroys the community of Plow Ground Road. And the people that live on Johns Island that feel like the people of Kiowa don't care about them, well, it's right there on paper now.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I just had a question about, obviously, I've lived out here for a while, and the traffic increases are just dramatic in just a few years. And, there's lots of development going on, more development is planned. So when you look at these traffic studies, how far in the future do you look, and what are the assumptions? Now, you obviously assume 526 is going through, at least half of the pitchfork is going through.
Correct.
And you probably assume that, that segment A or the intersection with Savannah Highway is gonna go through. But as far as the development out here, I mean, I'm just astonished at how much development you see just off of the main roads, and I don't even get into the other roads where it's going on. So what is the assumption? How far ahead do you look? Do you assume build out on Johns Island, or how do you do it?
20 years.
The,
Go ahead.
yeah, so the question was what assumptions and information did we use for the traffic projections, and in what year are those traffic projections out to? So the traffic projections are out to 2045, and we used the BCD COG and CHATS MPO. We started with their planning staff's traffic models. Our traffic engineer took those approved and models that are used throughout the Charleston region
For every project.
for all projects, and we took specific items that we did, some more traffic counts, some things that we looked at, and input and tweaked that model to come up with the projections that we used for Main Road.
So maybe a follow-up to that. Can you share those projections and, against the alternatives? The gentleman just said he didn't think traffic on Bohicket Road was a problem, that there were more turnouts. I guess I'd like to see what the traffic has increased over the years and how much more traffic you see on Bohicket in the next 20 years on River Road, whatever, based on which model. Just to get everybody an idea of what's coming down the pipe.
Yep, so the question was, could we share those projections? And I believe some of that traffic information is on the website now, where, and it,
To the alternatives?
yes, well, it's the traffic projections, and it's graphical, if I remember correctly, for areas along all of the existing roads on the southern portion of Johns Island. And they're not specific for the alternatives, but it is the basis of the traffic that we had to develop these alternatives. So, for instance, the section of Bohicket between Maybank and Plow Ground. In 2045, if you do nothing, that section will fail, and to get technical, it's a level of service that we look at. That level of service on that section of road is an F. So it's constant, well, not constant congestion, but we look at the peak hour. So there's an AM peak, a PM peak. You all know that. You drive that out here every day. So that's the time frame that we look at to develop all of these alternatives. And so that AM peak and PM peak for that section of road, it's just congested. The road can't handle the volume of traffic that's projected out in 2045.
And I will give a shout out to Dr. Roberts. Dr. Roberts has been studying those projections for decades, and they are available through the COG. So you can actually go to BCD COG, and they actually publish all of that future information. So we take he referred to the MPO, but they're the one that take the entire region, Berkeley, Dorchester, and Charleston, and they coalesce all of that future growth expectations, and they model that for us so that we can be working sort of off the same sheet of music. So that's where we're pulling that data from, and it does all of these alternatives where you see the colors are looking at that future anticipated level of service based on those numbers. So I saw your hand, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I live on Eatonville Road. I've lived there for 20 years, and I drive that section a couple times a day for 20 years. That section, I guess the section B from Brownswood to the river of Bohicket Road there.
C.
Was it C?
Yeah, all of Bohicket is in C.
Okay. That section, the only time there's a traffic problem is when stuff backs up from school there with the school buses. That's not going to be changed by having several lanes, because all traffic has to stop at the school buses anyway. That's not going to be new. But do I understand from what you said earlier that improvements on that section have been shelled?
Segment B, which is basically from Brownswood to, what is it, to Chisholm, River Chisholm.
Has it been shelled? What's the status of it?
Is it active? We're not working on it.
Okay, because I own the corner lot on Berry Hill and Bohicket, and everything I've seen before, y'all are going to take that away from me. That's my retirement property. I plan to live in. So do I build my forever house there or not?
That is segment C, just to be clear. And let's talk about that. I would like to know, and I think you may have emailed me before we've had some discussions about it, but there is an element of refinement that again has to be done. Do you know specifically the design for that intersection?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, the idea there was to straighten out or to align Berry Hill with the road across from Berry Hill.
The developer put that there because he didn't do it on purpose.
I understand that.
His choice, and there's only 8 houses. How many cars are servicing 8 houses?
I understand that, but if you look at the traffic on Bohicket, that offset intersection creates conflict between potential cars turning left.
That's the way for traffic, same as any other intersection.
I got,
a lot. I'm there.
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
As I understand it, you're going to have to go to the agency, see what's permissible, and you're going to have another engagement, public engagement. Do you have any feel for what timeline we're looking at by the time we get to a decision?
I would hope we would be back for y'all late spring would be the goal.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Late spring,
Late spring, that we would have a decision made?
No.
back to the
We're
public.
trying to narrow down to what could be
The late spring
permitted.
before we have it.
This is a lot for anyone to look at. We understand that. And you're gonna create hardships on someone with any of these, different on different people, right? So if we can narrow it down, I think that would be good to come back to the public and kind of get your feedback on what we could afford.
And so what we anticipate is being able to get some feedback from those permitting agencies and come back to the public with the narrowed one or two, I don't think we're going to do more than two options that we have to get the answer of whether or not we can move forward with 2 as a preliminary question. Yes, sir.
Yes, so I just want to start with a comment and then my question for Herbert and the team. My name is Vincent Felix. I live in the Sunset Shore, Shell Point neighborhood, which is just on the bottom of the Limehouse Bridge. So you go over, it's technically segment A. Very specifically, I looked through the plans and I've made my comments, my concerns, both to the Army Corps. I have all the public information I've sent to them, haven't heard back. So the pedestrian bridge is going to be placing at bend 18 and 19 on the pedestrian bridge at the very mouth of the creek that I live on. As y'all know, waterfront property is hard to come by, and when you do, it's with all these developments, you're lucky to get it for less than $1 million. I'm worried about, all of our neighbors are worried about, and I had a consultant who worked for the Army Corps of Engineers for 25 years come out and look at the plan and our creek to say, if this pedestrian bridge is built and piles 18 and 19 are driven into the mouth of our creek, all the things that the Army Corps cares about, right? The wetland impacts to wetlands, the impact to the stream and the creeks, all the sediment buildup, the unnatural water flow, or in this case lack thereof, would destroy my property value. It would destroy our way of life. I can Show you a video I took yesterday. The neighbors singing karaoke out on the dock. I caught a little croaker. Like, this is our way of life, and it is desperately going to be impacted if this pedestrian bridge is built. I've submitted all of our public comments. I haven't heard back. And here's my question, right? Why does that thing need to be built? And number two, has the 404B1 letter from the Army Corps of Engineers been responded to? Have you received it and has it been responded to?
We have not, so we have not seen your comment, if you would provide comments to them.
Oh, I got a stack of them.
Yeah, okay, so we have not gotten it yet. Now, with it being design build, knowing this, and as we go through right-of-way acquisition, I don't know if there's any on your property.
So two of our neighbors are gonna lose their homes because the pilings are gonna get placed there, and there's another piling.
Yeah, I think we can work around. The great thing about it being design build is that's the beauty, is the goal of us going design build is, I can't remember any houses being taken there, but I can elsewhere, there's like 3 or 4. Is our goal was to say, we want to reduce these relocations to 0. So we have some flexibility with design build. I'm sure we'll get your comment once they do submit something to us, and then we can.
Okay, and Councilwoman, like, I'm not sure if you were aware of this, like.
Let me just be clear, I don't, because I don't want to confuse you. If you have reached out to your council person, it actually wasn't me. I technically only represent, and it's kind of why we're having this meeting here, even though this affects many Johns Islanders, I only represent the area of Seabrook and Kiowa coming out just past this building. So if you want to email me, feel free to email me and I will follow through on it, but I have not seen that specific comment.
But there is a large group of people that do feel like they need a way to walk, like to West Ashley. That's the reason why we're doing it. That is the way we're moving forward from now on. Is any new large project we do, we need to accommodate every mode of transportation. So that's why we're doing it. Also, we have a main road overlay that county is adopted, and if we're holding developers and homeowners and everything to build that path, we have to hold ourselves to it as well.
Sure, and then from, you understand my perspective, like I bought a piece of property on the water. I mean, it goes directly to the intercoastal waterway. We take our boats out, we kayak out, we fish out of it. It shows it in the plan, right? 18 and 19 will be pushed right into the mouth of the creek.
Right, and the good thing is we get to refine those plans through the design build process. And so that is what she's explaining, and we will look at it. But please make sure you bring that to our attention. It's not in our hands right now, but when we get the 401, you can email me directly, jhoneycutt@charlestoncounty.org.
What was your name?
Debbie.
I'm Deborah, and this is Herb. He's actually the project manager, so if you want to get his card afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Mike, I realize this may be, had been covered in a previous presentation, but what's the criteria for each of your color codings? Best versus significant versus marginal versus minimal. Was that covered with a previous presentation, or potentially could be put on your website?
Yeah, my traffic engineer would have to answer that. She provided this for me with these levels, marginal, significant. And I don't know if it was a level of service increase or if she used volume to capacity ratios. I don't know. I will find out, though.
Right. That would be.
If we can clarify this on the website, we'll do it.
Give people a little bit more granularity as far as what's good, better, and best. And,
Sure.
What those thresholds are where you go from one to the other.
Yes, sir.
Would be very useful.
Okay. Yep. I'll look into that.
Betsy, welcome. Thank you. Thank you all for hosting this meeting and giving us an opportunity to dive into some of the details. As was mentioned, some of these graphs can be difficult for kind of the everyday person to understand. But I wanted to ask a little bit if there's an opportunity to elaborate on some of the safety concerns that are specific to this segment C. It's been mentioned a couple times in the meeting today by some of you here about the fact that
process because that's what's in the purpose and need. As far as safety goes, that this gentleman right here was just talking about is realigning. We do that in several alternatives. We do that in 1, I believe we do it in 1A, we do it in SITs. So they do all have a lot of the same safety features. If it touches something that we know where an intersection is an askew, we're gonna fix it. So a lot of the things you see in alternative SITs, you'll also see in 1A as well they do address safety. If we're doing something and we bring it up to standards, it's going to be safer, number one. But also, if we see an issue, something that we can fix when we're doing this project, we're going to fix it.
Okay, I wanted to ask one other quick question. You'd shown the breakdown for support of Alternative 6, that one being particularly confusing in the sense that there were some comments who specifically said, you know, the original Rational Roads presented version, and others you had mentioned that said the county's version. So I was just wondering if you could provide a little bit more detail of, you know, I think that there was some question around possibility for confusion, labeling Alternative 6 as Alt 6, some folks thinking, oh, this is the community's version, I'm going to vote for this. Some knowing that changes had been made, so kind of calling that out in their comments, I want the original version. So those that were supportive of the county's version, as we're referring to it, did they kind of specify that in the comments as you were alluding to, or is it more just, I support Alternative 6, and so you're interpreting that as the county's version? I don't know if that question is making sense.
Some did, some didn't. But when I'm going through 1,900 comments and somebody says, I prefer Alternative 6, I like this, this, and this, it was on the website, Alternative 6 on the website. At the top of that section, there was a link to the original Rational Roads proposal. So I think we did due diligence to point people and let them know there was a difference. So, and back to safety, I agree with everything Devery said. And in addition to that, all of the design standards that we use, everything that we as engineers do to design roads, safety is at the forefront. Safety is embedded in all of our design criteria. Everything that we have done, safety is included in there, and it was a thought process going through, you know, one, yes, how do we improve capacity, reduce congestion, improve safety, you know, so that was, all of that was there and something that we thought about going through this process.
So does that include reducing speeds and adding traffic calming devices? Those are things that cost little to no money, right? Would greatly improve safety, again, along this particular stretch of the corridor.
Well, reducing speed doesn't always equate to a safer road. So that's a falsehood. So take sections of Bohicket and you drop it to whatever speed limit you want to reduce it to, doesn't automatically make that a safer road. Because enforcement, to be quite honest with you. So.
John.
Following up with Betsy here. Safety, you know, and Chris, I understand what you're saying, safety is part of the process, but for a lot of the other county roads, such as Highway 41 up in East Cooper, in your district, I believe, Ms. Honeycutt, the Central Park Road, both of those, the purpose and need started out with safety. So when you start out with safety as a need, as opposed to a byproduct, you end up with a different solution. And that's certainly something that Rational Roads has been saying all along. We should have started, and then we didn't. We should have started with safety as a requirement, and then other things would follow through from that. The other thing is, I just want to clarify something that Ms. Honeycutt said. Maybank Highway was quote unquote not killed. Basically, the city wanted it to remain a community feel to that road, and I believe both SCDOT and the county wanted to violate it. And so there was a conflict there, and it was a conflict that happened, not that one or the other quote unquote killed it. They just couldn't agree upon what they actually wanted. And if I'm wrong, you know, you guys stop.
Yes, we defunded that project.
Yes, right, exactly. So it was because the city had a different perspective. They wanted to be a community-based road, and the county and the SOD wanted to be a thoroughfare. That was the comment.
No, it was all kinds of things. It was the federal highway says, hey, what y'all are proposing isn't safe. It's not ideal. A UPS truck can't get through an 8-foot wide lane. We can't support this. We're going to take our $15 million away from you if you pursue this. And the city said, yes.
That's why I said SCDOT.
Correct.
Right. And then the other thing, go back to this, and it is very misleading. For example, it talks about improvements in segments along Bohicket Road. As was mentioned, almost all of Bohicket Road south of Edenville, perhaps even south of Cloudmount, according to the 2045 BCD COG projections, doesn't need improvements. So what you're doing is you're giving that segment 1 a big green for improving things that don't have to be improved. And so it'd be more likely almost to give it a red because it's actually doing things that shouldn't be done in accordance with the 2045 projections. So I think as you go forward and you show this to folks, I think you really need to rethink what you're trying to say here, because the reality is I think alternative 1 is actually not improving those segments, but is segments that need to be improved. It's almost like you need to say segments along Bohicket Road that in accordance with BCD COG data, the 2045 projections need improvements. If that was really what we're after, which I believe we are, then alternative 1 would probably get a red, and alternative 6 would probably get a green. So again, I think we're misleading by putting those colors up and not putting it in accordance with the 2045 data says it needs to happen.
Well, I think like this gentleman said, we'll try to provide clarification from our traffic engineer on what these colors mean.
I would love to suggest that you eliminate that slide altogether. I think it's very misleading. As John said, it's very influential. This gentleman over here sees the red dot and automatically it's, a red flag, literally. And we don't know the criteria for which that was put together. It seems, you can't share that with us. Like, why is this a part of anything? I mean, I just think it's just misleading, and
I think we need to do, we could certainly do a better job in explaining what this means. I don't know if we'll use this table, but we'll get with our traffic engineer and do that, because I think it is going to be important to people when they know that taxpayers' money is being spent. How much of improvement are you giving me? So we need to do perhaps a better job in showing it.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Can you put a context within any of these alternatives? Anyone, choose the best one. They have all agreed. Put a context of time frame in terms of where you are today versus the completion of the project, just so that everybody has an idea. Because you've all worked very hard at this, we can tell. Well, one word probably describes for me where this process is compared to development on John's Island, is the word glacial. I've been seeing this for a long, long time. Been on John's Island, Seabrook, for nearly 20 years. And nothing is really happening with respect to these. A lot of these issues have been discussed. Give a context to everybody here. What type of time frame? Because the gentleman asked the question before, how long this will take? And I had a kind of a glib answer in my mind, kind of not within our respective lifetime will we really see this. So if you would kindly give a context of time.
So 2025, 2026 is the goal to start construction for this piece. Segment A, next year. As I said, we're reviewing those qualifications right now, so. Started next year, but yes, it is moving forward, and we have to have it built by 2027.
Should that include
So.
any alternative, choosing an alternative, all of the things that go through that?
Well, see,
your process?
yeah. So this one obviously is a lot of different opinions, right? So when you have something like this, it's a lot harder to build than White and Glimacano, which went in 2 years, right? So
the question to you, Councilwoman, during this interregnum between something today and something happening 2025, 26, if indeed that happens, what can you do from the standpoint of making Bohicket Road safer? You have yellow lines on Bohicket Road that are so almost obscure that people are passing on using those as passing lanes.
Yeah, so we actually are doing interim improvements, and we've put that on the website at multiple areas throughout the entire corridor. I'm going to speak first because it's probably the most, the comment we hear the most is Marion Point Road. The DOT is doing a safety audit, and we are going to be making some improvements. Do we have an update?
We've done it. We're looking to put conceptual plans together for improvements at Marianne Point. Doesn't mean that's final construction plans or anything like that, but conceptual plans within the next month or two.
Installing or maybe cleaning reflective materials on trees might be a good idea. They exist already, but they're so obscured, no one can see them.
And DOT, to go back to actually what's been done, when they improved the bridge right there at Plow Ground, there was a major enhancement at that intersection. We took down that, DOT took down that tree, keeping in mind these are DOT roads, so everything we do, we have to get their permission. But nonetheless, those types of things would be easy, making sure all of the reflective material is properly angled and in place. Occasionally they get hit and that sort of thing. But again, those types of little things, and I will say this to everyone, if you come across right after Ian, there was a place on River Road that got washed out. Somebody put it on Facebook, and within an hour, we had DOT respond to it. If you see a reflector that gets knocked over or something that's out of order, send us an email. That's the kind of thing we can put a work order in and make those changes pretty quickly.
Do you think the Department of Transportation could make periodic audits themselves? Just drive on the road and perhaps see some of this?
They do. They do. I think it's every 6 years, their cycle. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's a fair point, but that's why we want the community engagement as well. Yes, sir.
I work for a Department of Transportation in another state, and I drive Honeycutt and Main Road up to 10 times a week. So I pretty much see everything as I go down both of those roads. And I will say that the condition of trees when they come down, left on the side of the road, barely off of the roadway, as well as the condition of the pavement. A good point is that the lights where you come down Bohicket to Baybank almost right in there, the condition of that road there is just unbelievably empty. And now you just said that 6 years. I'll just tell you this: the state that I work for, the county was responsible for inspecting all the roads within their districts every month, and anything that they saw in that was to be cleaned up or corrected during that month, and they were evaluated on how well they did that. So when you say 6 years, that's just unbelievable number to me, and I find that really questionable.
Well, and let me be a little bit more clear, because that's DOT. The county actually does the maintenance along Betsy Carrison's, the grass. So we do the grass cutting. We also do have an incredibly hardworking and I think successful, in large part, pavement management program. So to the extent the roads themselves, the actual aggregate on the road is being evaluated, we have a very sophisticated truck that actually goes around and does that. Every road in the county is scheduled for some type of either resurfacing, paving, correcting. So there is a resurfacing plan. But when I'm talking about DOT coming out to make this, they have a regular audit. It's just not, they have thousands of miles of road.
When is the condition I gave you on the main road coming into Baybank down there, how bad that road is down there, as far as it's been patched about 1 million times, and it's just as bumpy as you can all get out. Does the county have any plans to do any repaving or fixing that intersection in the near future?
Give me your name and number. A lot of these arterials and DOT does, a lot we do, and we ask those questions. We have to be here in the office, and she can tell us if it's on schedule, when it's scheduled, if it's not, who to contact from the DOT, and we'll be more than happy to share that information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I saw one more, Betsy, and I'll come back to you. Did somebody over here have a question before I go back to Betsy? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly follow up on a comment about segment B, and skipping over segment B for now because the county's models, I think you said, Jeffrey, suggest that county's going to respond to that reasonable and realistic funding plan that the DOT is requiring in order to move forward. There isn't enough funding to even do that project. So my question is, without funding secured for 526, even if funding was identified, I think the best estimate is we're 10 years minimum away from starting construction on that project. So going back to the rationale of skipping over segment B with the understanding that Mark Clark might someday be built, can you talk a little bit about that as it relates to timeline?
If I recall,
or if there's any updates on the
Yeah,
funding plan?
So the Mark Clark extension, I know it's being evaluated by a firm in Atlanta. They're doing a value engineering to really refine what that number is before we identify funding or where to get funding from. So that number's supposed to come back. Do you know when that number's? I think it's supposed to come back this year. So they are working on that. So a lot of people don't believe that number. So that's got to be done, number one, so we know how short we are. If I remember correctly, and I'll have to go back, but if I remember the project approach, even without Mark Clark extension, actually segment C was the worst, believe it or not. So, and I'll have verify that and get you that information.
Yes, ma'am. I wasn't here at the beginning, so I apologize if this was already discussed, but this gentleman said that, going back to safety with the speed, I live near Honeycutt and Edenvale, and the cars are driving, there's no consistency in that, so I'm asking you, because I don't know if we should go through you, or where I might be directing my questions, as far as the speed, but that road has so many different speed limits on there, but the people are driving 70 on the road. It sounds like a freeway, and I've been there for 8 years now and left and came back in the last 3 years. I was gone for a couple of years and came back, and all this stuff has been development just went crazy while I was gone and got permits for all kinds of things.
Don't leave again.
So my question is if this is a 10-year timeline or whatever, we don't really know exactly when anything might take place, but it does seem like to me if safety with the speed doesn't keep it, the speed being reduced doesn't keep it safer, potentially from your perspective as an engineer, I would like to know how anybody can drive down a 2-lane road with nothing on the side and go 70 with curves. I've heard people hit trees near my house many times, and it's 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and I think that's what Chris was saying. You can reduce a speed limit, but that's artificial unless there's someone enforcing it. Obviously, the speed limit's not 70. People going 70 are breaking the speed limit.
It's 55. It's like 50 or 55. And you go down towards Seabrook and Kiowa, and you go to James Island. I've noticed just moving here, everywhere else around us, people have to go 35 or 40 miles an hour. They're posted. For some reason, down Edenvale, it's 50 miles an hour signs. They should never be that speed. There's no sidewalks. There's no protection, and they've got, the drainage ditches. These roads are not made to go that speed. This is not a freeway. This is a rural road. So I don't see how reducing the speed is going to cause a problem. It only seems to cause a problem because there's 10,000 more cars on the road now, and that's where the issue is. So who do we direct that?
Well, as a preliminary matter, it's an enforcement issue, because if people are going 70, there should be someone that's stopping them and ticketing them so they don't go 70. But
Signs say 35, 45, 50 along there, and 50's not safe. It shouldn't even be 50.
The DOT can do a speed study for you, and they can give you all the analysis done for that.
Would that take 6 years?
And I don't know when the last time they did one was. But you're talking about bureaucracy. Excuse me. I'm sorry, but it's just a bureaucracy. Every time you turn around, you just told.
no, we needed a safety audit at Marianne Point Road, and they did that safety audit within 6 months, and we've gotten the results back, and we are making some improvements there. So it doesn't always take that long, but I will say we have had trouble reducing speed limits. They wouldn't reduce the speed limit on Riverland Drive when we asked. They wouldn't reduce it on Central Park Road. So even when it is truly a residential road within the urban growth boundary where there is a lot of density, they're still hesitant to do that because people break the law. And when you artificially reduce it, it just causes more problems because people are lulled into thinking. The traffic studies show that.
Yeah, it's a fact. If you remember, Leland came down and told us that if you look at the studies, that
Yeah, well, there's no doubt, to your point about the development and the growth out here, there's no doubt that this area has grown in the last 15, 20, 30 years. And to be candid, it will keep growing. And I don't know if y'all know or have seen the PUD that's at the intersection of Betsy Carson and River, but there's a development there that's been entitled since the 80s. I mean, it's intense commercial, it's a node. There will be more houses, more multifamily, possibly a hotel. That stuff's already entitled. And what I think people don't realize is what's already out there. And so really I lived out here when the moratorium was lifted, and we saw a flood of building come after that because everything had been stifled for so long. And it is, and it's going to continue to grow, and we have to do something, which is why I'm here, and I'm going to keep fighting for this. And hopefully we get to a place in this process where we can move forward. Does anybody have any other questions? Because I wanted to be able to stick around and help individuals. Yes, sir?
I just have a comment. During the process of showing us what plans you have and us giving your input, alternate 6 was advertised. Alternate 7 was pushed. None of the others got that kind of publicity or signage along the road. So have you considered how that tilted the results? Number one, and number two, when you go back out, are you going to control that in some way so that you get an objective input rather than one that's
One thing we did have to do is, during the NEPA process, we are looking for an honest assessment from individuals who are coming in, looking at the alternatives and providing their feedback. What we had was individuals come in with particular scripts of what to write down. We won't allow that, but we can't control what signage is put in people's yards. So to the extent we can control and make the process one that is fair and open to everyone, we will do that. But all of these alternatives are equally valid in the sense that they all meet the purpose and need, and how that information is conveyed through various interest groups it's up to the community. So. Yes, sir, you had a question.
I had a question about cost. That slide that compared the cost was sort of glossed over, and I wonder if it's sort of a moot point to choose these options if there's no funding for.
These are funded by the tax and sales tax, and this is federal also. Right. So some of these, yeah, they would probably be under our budget. Absolutely. So that is going to play a role as we move forward with this as well. But we need to get to the permitting agencies and their take first. They're not going to pay so much attention to that. We want to know what they say first.
So your comment about the note of River and Betsy Carson obviously shows there's some need for improvement for River Road, regardless of where it's on there, not whether it's wide or whatever. It needs improvement as a collateral circulation to get to those areas on that side. So it seems like that should be on the table. In terms of dissecting these things down to getting to 2, as you said earlier, don't you think realistically looking at this, that particularly Alt 7 and perhaps 3, I mean, you've driven Plow Ground Road multiple times, right? I mean, don't you think going from a 45-mile-an-hour rural highway where houses are very close to the street, you have horse farms, farmland, a school playground there, I mean, realistically, a 5-lane with a median in the middle through that, I mean, that's a community. That's not a road. That's actually a community over there. And if people here don't go through there, it's just a very nice rural South Carolina highway. And the thought of putting a 5-lane through there, or what Betsy mentioned back there, that's not safe. There's horses, dogs, everything else. I really don't understand how that can't just be tossed out. I mean, can you justify building a 5-lane road down Flower Ground?
I don't think we're there yet, and I don't think Alt 7 goes.
I've seen the photos.
These are all reasonable alternatives for us to explore, and we have an obligation to show them.
I know what you're talking about bringing them down. I'm just saying, does the Plow Ground community, I don't see any of the people here. Yeah,
So I'm not going to say what I think. I'm going to go through the NEPA process, and our next step is to talk to permitting agencies.
People live there.
So staff aren't ready to say it. I'll say it as the currently elected official. I don't think that goes forward with this process. But we're not there yet. We've got to go through the alternatives. So I don't want to get too hung up on something that may not be. But yes, ma'am.
So it was just discussed that the root cause
I don't have it at my fingertips, but we mentioned earlier it is on the BCD COGS website because they track all of that information. So if you go, that's the MPO, the regional organization that collects all of that data. You can see it, and you can see what they project in terms of what we've measured these future levels of service against. Yes, ma'am. The Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester Council of Government, BCD COG.
Somebody brought up moratorium, and it sounds like you alluded to the fact that there once was one, and then it got released, and of course there would have been a spike in activity. Is there any discussion or reasonable expectation that perhaps there could be some dampening, if not a complete moratorium, some kind of dampening until we can get ahead of these roads that are, as somebody said, just happening at a glacial pace?
I'm not aware of any discussion of that at this point. City can certainly do it, and I think the city did at one point. So. Yeah, our development isn't what is really perpetuating the density because it's mostly within the urban growth boundary. So I don't know that.
It's affecting us in our roads. So if you're our representative, it seems like that could be something to be discussing. Is we're having a hard time keeping ahead of these of this development. And in my opinion, the community needs should be put forward before the developers and the builders' needs. I mean, we're here full time in the community, and you're representing us. I just think that I'd like to hear more in this discussion today about that aspect of what's been going on. And I've been following everything that the town has put out. It's been, pretty confusing. Obviously by nature, there's a lot of different options. But I think somebody needs to be the leader here to sort of distill it and help us understand them better. Like that slide that folks were saying, we don't even know what those colors represent, which is a disappointment to put a slide up that is like that. But just the background of what are our alternatives to slow some of this down, some of the development, until we can catch these roads up, because it's kind of scary to drive on these roads and try to evacuate for a hurricane or other event on these roads. So it's a real quality of life issue that I would just encourage you to maybe have an additional forum where it's a little bit more backed up by that kind of a solid presentation of all of the aspects that affect everybody in this room who seems to be homeowners and people that drive on the roads and are concerned with it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Understanding what you said, that speed limits have no effect on safety. Don't agree, but that's fine.
That's not exactly what I said.
This would fall on, my question would fall on you, Councilwoman. In terms of enforcement, you're the only person I see could influence enforcement. In my opinion, and some people here, enforcement is really at a minimum on Bowacre Road. What can you do?
Absolutely. And whenever I have reached out to the sheriff multiple times because unincorporated, she says they'll send people out. Their resources are limited. I mean, they're at 50% right now, their force, but we certainly, whenever we see a spike or whenever there does appear to be something going on, there are sheriff's deputies who are assigned to this area and who will monitor and enforce routinely. And she is responsive to that.
I guess our tax dollars are being very maximized.
Yes, sir.
I lived in another state before, and that was a very developed, it was an island, it was on the other side of the country. But they had, anytime a developer wanted to do a development, they charged the developer to fix the road. So the developer paid for the road, the city didn't have to come up with the money, the county didn't come up with the money. If the developer wants the development, they fix that segment of road. Otherwise, they don't get a development.
Right. And our curb cuts require that.
Out to anybody, or they just free willy-nilly?
Maybank Highway.
Funds. I think this piece of the county, the city, didn't get the impact funds like Mount Pleasant did for some reason or another. And I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, they were exploring something called a MID, as the Municipal Impact District, where what they were going to do with these new houses is tack on an extra amount to the mortgage every month to pay for stuff. And I don't know whatever happened to that, but I do know that they were looking, they did a lot of research into that.
People pay that because that's getting tacked onto their mortgage that are buying the homes. That's not the developer.
Right.
The developer's sitting in the Caribbean with a margarita
Well, we know those always get passed on to the home purchaser. The idea there is that the new homes coming online wouldn't be burdening the people that have been here. And so, yes, that is an option. But I know in many of our plans, the one the county improved right there on Maybank Highway in front of the villages, they had to improve that they had to create the turn lane, they had to create the refuge in the middle. So they do have to make improvements to access their parcel.
And whenever we have an overlay district, we have to reserve a piece for a pedestrian path. There are certain things that we can do.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman, can I ask for clarification? The lady back here asked about a moratorium, and your response when she was done was, thank you. So, clarification, are you in support of a moratorium or not?
I lived through a moratorium and it was horrible. If there's a moratorium, if there is a need for a moratorium, I am there to solve the problem. There is a problem that needs to be solved, and that has been my position since the beginning. I don't support moratoriums because they kick the can down the road and we end up with a huge problem on the other side. And that's what I lived through on the island. We were waiting and waiting for Maybank to be widened or some relief to come. Instead, that didn't come, and then the development flooded in on top of us, and it was unbearable.
But I guess her point is, if we're years away from any solution, no matter what the solution is, the developers are still at it, right? Up on Main Road, they've got 400 houses going in. They've got Keel River over here, they've got other things. The Keel partners are going to build another bunch in here where the shooting club is. I mean, you're adding more and more and more. Maybank Highway, you're adding, retail, you're adding businesses up and down that place. You're adding more and more roads. Before we address any of this, so back to this lady's point, which I think is a valid point, is I realize progress needs to go on.
Sure.
But at what point in time do you start to take into consideration the point that everybody else is making, that we're all here, and progress is going, and we're paying the price for progress. So the county's happy because y'all get more tax dollars, which is great. But we're unhappy because we're getting stuck with the output of all these bad roads and everything else. What are you going to do for us? You're our councilwoman. You're up for re-election. What are you doing for us?
Again, this is a county update, so I want to be clear. This is not a campaign event, but a county update, and this is what I'm doing. I am pushing these projects forward to try to get some relief out here on the island.
But we're years away from that. What are you doing in the interim?
We are working on all of these intersection improvements, and there are many. So, I'm happy to discuss that further, but we've been intensely working on that for the last 4 years. John? And this, is anyone who hasn't asked a question that has a question, because this will probably be the last one. Yes, sir.
Ms. Honeycutt, it was basically a comment you made. We were talking about the numbers and percentage and everything else. You said something to the effect that we won't allow scripts. Does that somehow imply that some of the comments were not included in the totals because they were considered scripts?
No, sir. Everything was included. But the NEPA process does not allow any type of influence during the public meeting. So, thank you. All of them were included. Yes, sir.
I just had one quick comment about what we were talking about with the moratorium. We know somebody, and you probably already know this, but I just was like, they don't care, they already know. But somebody that we know, their son works in the building department, and he's basically frustrated, and are many of the people that work in there because they just rubber stamp everything. Somebody pays a little bit of money and they rubber stamp it. Now, that's somebody that works in there. I'm not making that up because I don't have any reason to, other than to say that we're all for growth. We think there's a lot of blessing and benefit when things grow. More tax dollars will increase things, But again, without the infrastructure and years away, as more things are still being processed, some that were already on the books and many things that I know weren't on the books originally, that are getting done. Without any hope, we just need to figure out, and I think everybody probably in here needs to figure out, do we just pick up and move before it gets worse and worse because we're going to wait out our lifetime and still development because we don't want to stop any development, stop the process. No, we're looking for some guidance, I guess, too, because I think that's where we're at.
What I would urge everyone to do is please help us get through these processes. That's what we're trying to do, is bring relief. And I realize it takes time, and we have made small improvements along the way, just like you saw at Plowground and other areas. But absolutely, I definitely agree that those issues need to be addressed. So I appreciate all of you coming out today. Thank you so much. I'll be around here for a few more minutes. Happy to take any other questions, but thank you.